Hey, everybody. Welcome to Wine Wednesday with the Whisperer. Tonight, first of all, I'm drinking on the Merlot, and I have an extra special guest. We haven't done a reefing type stream in a while, so I've got my very good friend and YouTube great, Michael Aaron from Aaron's Aquarium. Welcome, Michael.
Hello.
And really quickly, you told me before we started, but got to tell everybody else, what are you drinking on tonight?
I'm on the hard stuff. I'm on the vodka. I'm not really. It's water.
he, as I said in the he's all about the water. Okay. Well, I'm going to get right into it, guys, because actually, one more note for anyone, especially Salty Reef, if you happen to be watching. I finally got the computer back today, and I realized that before it went to poo, I was playing with the background. So I finally have a seahorse background, and here we are too in a reef stream. Hey, things happen. Anyways, either way, I stuck the one picture down at the bottom, so we're good, right? Anyways,
Yeah.
okay, all right, Aaron. So, give me an idea about how you started in reefing in general. What made you decide to get your first reef tank?
Oh God, to be honest, I started off with freshwater, as most people do. Um, and to be honest, it was everything like as you probably noticed, when I get a tank, I get bored quickly and then I move on quickly. So what it was with freshwater, I did all of what was considered the challenges in freshwater, like discus and stuff like that. And I was just sort of like, what can I do now? And there wasn't really anywhere else I could go other than like doing planted tanks and stuff. But like when it came to fish, I sort of like reached the sort of like the height of difficulty I felt. So there was a lad that I used to talk to a lot. I forget his name now. On the freshwater side, and he said to me, "When you're going to go reef?" And I said, "Never. I am never ever getting a reef tank because they just look too difficult. They look way too expensive, and no, never going to do it." But it just ended up getting to the point where I got bored with the freshwater side of things, and I thought, "Oh, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go." And then it just sort of like went from there, really. And same again, started off like everybody else does, started off with soft corals and, bit of this and bit of that. But I'm one of those people where if somebody tells me I can't do something or you're not supposed to do something, then if they can't give me an adequate answer as to why, I'm doing
You
it.
know,
So like,
that's sorry. And I was gonna say that's one of the things I really love about like your channel, which we'll talk about in a moment. But just that you don't take anything at face value. You go out and you figure it out for yourself and find out if it's really true. So go on. I didn't mean to interrupt. What were you saying?
no, yeah, it's just exactly that. It's just more just sort of like if somebody turns around and says, you can't do something, like for example, you can't put an anemone into a reef tank until the reef tank is 1 year old. And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, why? And well, you just can't. And it's like, well, give me a reason why I can't do it, and then I won't. And well, you just can't. I'm like, well, that's not a good enough reason. I'm doing it. Do you know what I mean? Because as far as I was concerned, if the tank is stable, if the tank has the correct parameters and everything else to care for an anemone, whether that's today or in a year's time, what's the difference? You know what I mean? So that's sort of like where I started with the reefing hobby, was where I left off with the freshwater hobby, was anything that people said you can't do or you can't do now. It was like, well, if you haven't got a good enough reason as to why I can't do it, then I'm going to give it a go. You know what I mean? And then it's just stemmed from there. I've had my ups, I've had my downs, and I've just tried to teach people, well, not teach people, show people my ups and my downs so they don't have to make them, or they can make them either way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's what it's all about. And did you what made you decide? I know you said right before we started streaming that you started your YouTube channel right when you started the reef tank. What made you decide to share the experience? Was it this that you wanted to show people, if you said something, this is why you were saying it, or what was your reason? Do you just
It
want to?
was, to be honest with you, nobody in my house is interested in fish. My wife doesn't care. My kids don't care. none of my friends close to me are interested in fish. Nobody, I didn't have anybody to engage with when it came to this hobby. So I was on YouTube, obviously searching how to do this and how to do that, you know, how to blah, 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 blah. And I noticed that there was this community, you know, everywhere I went, there was that same person or that same group of people commenting. And, you know, I was on one guy's video and he'd be on the other guy's video. And like, there was just all these people talking to each other and everything. I thought, wow, that's so cool. You know what I mean? So I thought, well, I'm going to start making my own videos so that I can get involved in this community. And so literally, as soon as I'd done my first tank, it was another one of those tanks where, you know, people said, you can't do this. So I'd done it. And I thought, well, because it's one of those tanks where it's a bit of a shaky ground tank, you know what I mean? It'll get people looking at it and it'll get people thinking, hold on a minute. People say you can't do that, but he's doing it. So I started with that really. And then just all stemmed from there, just grew from there. So really it was just because they had no mates.
I love it. And what made you start naming the tanks? That's what I kind of told people I was going to ask mainly because I think it's so cool. What brought that about?
Do you know what? I think what it is people engage more when they, you know, a tank's a tank, you know, a fish is a fish, you know, you can have multiple yellow tanks, you can have multiple regals or whatever else, but, you know, slap a name like Dory on a fish. Now everybody in the world knows what a regal is because it's Dory. You know what I mean? And the same for the tanks. It's like 150-gallon reef. Well, everybody's got a 150-gallon reef or a 200-gallon or a 400-gallon reef. You know, everybody can use that title. Whereas if I say the wife, then it's quite standout. You know what I mean? Everybody knows who the wife is now. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
just in case people don't, I know it. The Aaron's channel will be linked in the description when we're done. But give a quick little glimpse of what where the wife name came from. I know it's in the videos, but tell anybody who doesn't know.
So like I said, I like to name once a portion of my channel has got foundations, has cemented that it's going to be here for an extended period of time. I'll name it. You know what I mean? Like my fish on my logo, Jeff. You know, he was just a Soal tank for a year or so before he got his name, and I named him after another freshwater YouTuber called Jeff B. I named him after him. So then once Jeff got his name, then he came synonymous all around the world.
Right.
So then it was like, you know, same again. I thought, oh, this is cool. You know, everybody knows who Jeff is. So then it started, you know, with the names of the tanks. I'd always done it like, but it was always names like, you know, your typical one of them was the beast tank or, you know, just stuff like that, stuff that doesn't really have any meaning. So then I wanted a name for this new one because this is like the biggest tank I've ever owned. It's like probably the most prominent tank I've ever owned. I wanted it to really stand out. So I was asking people for names and it was same old. It was like Poseidon, Hercules, you know, all these different types of names that was, you know, like big names or water-based names or whatever else, but nothing that had true meaning. And then my wife, the real one, like said, why don't you call it the wife? So I was like, why? And then she said, well, you know, it takes all of your money and it demands all of your attention. It gets more attention than I do, so it may as well be your wife. So I was like, fair enough. And I loved it because it had a little story behind it. You know, I can tell people forever and a day what you know, where the name came from. So it sort of like had a bit of a backstory then. So, and then obviously the wife, people like that is proper random for a fish tank. Do you know what I mean? So it really, so it sticks.
You take something to the extreme and make it work. I love it.
Yeah.
And I don't be too surprised if I come out with a husband tank because all of my tanks are the same exact situation. Okay, so what made you take the leap from the wife to the one? Give me a little backstory on that.
So the one is sort of like it's a it's a bit of a dream tank in a way. It's not the true dream tank because I don't have the space for that. My true dream tank is 5 foot long by 5 foot deep by 2 foot tall. That's my dream tank, but in this space, it's never fitting in here. So this was sort of like this was an attempt because what I wanted to do with the one is basically for it to live up to its name. I wanted it to be the one. I wanted it to be the one that everybody talks about. I wanted it to be the one that I stick with for longer than 2 years. I wanted it to be the one that does everything. Do you know what I mean? So the main goal for this tank is to create a one of those Google image type tanks,
Ooh.
where you Google SPS Reef and it comes up.
Mhm.
That's the idea that I want. Now, I could have achieved that with the wife, but the only problem was because it was so big, it was really, really expensive to get it to some sort of showpiece. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it was particular as well. I had 3 sides to fill with coral and little frags were just lost in that tank. You know what I mean? So this that was secondary to why this came. The first reason why to this came is because this house that I live in is not very big. In the UK, our houses are nowhere near the size of what your houses are over there. So we have sort of like 2 living spaces, 2 living rooms, and then a really small sort of like galley style kitchen where you can't even stand next to each other, shoulder to shoulder.
Mhm.
So we had a conversation that we was going to turn this room into a kitchen. Now, obviously, to do that, the tank had to go. So, I had to be a grown up about it and sort of like say, well, I couldn't really throw my toys out of the pram and say, I'm not getting rid of the tank, stuff your kitchen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had to be grown up about it and say, all right. So then we came to a compromise and I said, like, all right, then. Well, if I'm getting rid of the big tank, then I still need a tank. So I'm going to get something, special, but smaller. So everything about this tank is special in a way, the lights, the way that they look, the tank being acrylic in the UK, next to nobody, if anybody uses acrylic tanks as a normal household tank. The whole idea, the whole concept for the tank, if I can just show you,
I love it.
the whole concept around it was you're not going to be able to see it very well because obviously the lights are off. But when the lights are on, it looks crystal clear in there. So because there's no silicone beads around the edges, there's no black silicone or anything else like that.
Ah.
The tank in essence looks invisible. You don't when you look, you don't focus on the tank, you focus on the scape. So the idea was it was supposed to sort of like emulate a piece of artwork that you'd go into a museum. So this tank, the cabinet, the reason why it's concrete is to represent like a stand for like a bust
I
type
love
thing.
it. Go on. I love
Yeah.
it.
So that's what that's supposed to be. And then the artwork sits on top of the stand. And then obviously the tank itself was made from acrylic so that it won't distract your eye with a black border. It'll just be all focused on there. And then obviously everything top to bottom, from the lighting to the custom made scape to the over the top flow, even like the the custom built sump, um, just all of that type of stuff all done. This tank was sort of like the one, you know what I mean? Because everything about it is fancy, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's sort of like what spurred me on to change because I spoke to a few people and said, right, I'm thinking about getting rid of the big tank, but I want to do something special. I'm going smaller. And the only problem is with going smaller in the reefing hobby is people think going smaller is a defeat. It's a downgrade, but really this is far from a downgrade. You know what I mean? It's a way upgrade compared to what I had. So I wanted to create something special. So I spoke to a few companies, said this is what I want to do, and they said, right, let's get on it. Cost me a fortune, but
Of course.
you know,
I was gonna
worth
say,
it.
everyone, if you want to get the exact details on the beautiful tank that Aaron just or Michael Aaron just showed us, Check out Aaron's Aquarium, and he's made videos already going through, every step of setting up the tank, and you can find out all about it on his channel, which again, Salty Reef, thank you for linking it, and we'll link it again in the description. But just, and I don't want to take away from those videos whatsoever, but what would you say is the main thing that is going to, you've already described, the lighting, that everything is exactly what you wanted, but is there going to be a difference in what you put into the tank versus the wife?
Oh yeah. So the wife was a mixed reef, so it had a bit of everything in. Whereas this one is going to be SPS dominated. I hope. Depends. You know what I mean, I could fill it full of sticks and they all strip.
Right.
But it's going to be SPS dominated. There will be a few LPS in there. Like I've got a Lobo in there at the moment and a few other bits. So there will be just a few other bits to add flow and texture. But it will be SPS dominated, and I'm hoping that in the end the actual rockscape itself will disappear because it'll just be coral.
See,
That's
I
where
really,
even
I really love that scape though. I don't want it to, but it'll be cool all coral too. I can see your point, but I really think you did a great job on the scape. But go on. I'm sorry. So you're looking to cover it with coral, and what else? Any
and that's
particular,
it really.
or is there any
Yeah,
focus on
yeah.
fish that you've got, or?
Fish for me are a real secondary thought. I'm not a big fish person, to be honest. It's one of those where most of the fish that will be in there will be there for they'll be worker bees basically. They'll be there for a reason. Like say for example, I've got a selection of tangs which are there to do algae removal, to just basically just maintain the tank in that way. I'll have things like gobies maybe to maintain the sandbed. I'll have obviously snails and stuff and cleanup crew to maintain the tank. Everything will be there to do a job. And then we'll probably have just a few fish which will be more decorative. Like I've got a pair of black storm clowns. So they'll be more decorative than anything, but most of them will just be there to do a job. Either provide waste to the tank to feed the corals or keep everything clean for the corals. Everything's all about the corals, if you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean, and I think it's excellent. Hey, I wanted to say, Cruz, thank you so much for supporting the channel. And I'm going to open this up for anyone to join in just a few more minutes. Had a couple more questions, and then, of course, I will open this up for anyone to join. But thank you so much for the support, Cruz, and we got to get you in here. I know you were just on Reef Dudes, but hey, all right. Sorry, I had to go ahead and do that shout out real quick. And I completely agree with every fish having a job. And this is typically a seahorse channel, so we're more focused on the fish. But a lot of the things that you said are just right on. I couldn't agree more about like the bigger tank not necessarily always being the best thing. The same thing I ran into is all of these tanks. They're expensive to keep up, and you can't really focus in on what you're trying to do. And I love that you're using fish in the way to support the idea. People that try to do both kind of run into a lot of problems. But so what would you say, what within the few tanks that you have covered on your channel, and obviously just you've covered, what would you say are the things that you have learned the most? Like what are you doing differently now that you didn't know in the beginning?
There's loads.
I know you could do a whole
Because
channel, right?
oh yeah, God, we could be here for hours. But to be honest, the biggest, I've learned a lot from mistakes. I feel that you learn the best from mistakes, whether they're yours or somebody else's. They're always the best way to learn. If you never fail, you never learn, basically. So, I've had many fails. I've had many things where stuff hasn't gone right, and it's all. I live my life based on the theory that everything happens for a reason. No matter how glum, how bleak anything looks today, there's always a reason why it's happening. And it's a positive reason somewhere down the road. You've just got to be able to travel that road to get to that point. And all of these things that have happened, good and bad, through my time as a hobbyist, has all come to this point now. the knowledge that I've learned through, through people like Cruz, for example.
Sure.
I picked up so much, which has been another great thing about YouTube is it's given me access to people that, are legends to me. You know what I mean? The first day I started talking to Cruz, I was like,
I know.
you know what I mean? And it's stuff like that. And then, Cruz gets me talking to Leng Sai.
Right.
And it's like, what? Your stream's gone off on my screen.
Uh-oh.
Hold on, let me refresh it.
Are we still good, everybody? Salty, we still good? Usually he lets me know if something goes wrong.
Might just, oh no, it's off on my screen.
Let me see. We're still good on me. Sorry, we're still live.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay.
So it's just been great for that. I forgot what the original question was because I just started waffling.
As did I. If there's anything in particular that you are doing differently because of something you learned.
Yeah, that's it. So really, it's just been many things that I've learned, and if it was to take away anything, is the biggest thing that I've learned is to ask the question why. You know what I mean? Is always ask why. If I turn around to you today and say, you can't put an anemone in your reef tank for a year, ask me why. You know what I mean? If I can't give you an answer, then go and do the research. Or, if the answer that you're given isn't good enough for you, go away and do your research. But never just let me tell you something and just go, okay, without you understanding it. Always ask that question why. If you can answer that question, if you say why, and then you can answer the question yourself, then fine. You know what I mean? Cool, you sorted. But that's the biggest thing to take away from me is always ask that question why. Why can I not do this? Or why am I doing this? Or, you know what I mean? Why am I putting this clearly sick fish into my reef tank? Because I just want to. You know what I mean? It's like, why am I not setting up a quarantine tank? Oh, well, it's because I haven't got the space for a quarantine tank, or I don't have a tank, or I don't have this or that. I've said that for years, but I've set one up now and it's a plastic tub, just a storage tub with a couple of hang on the back filters and a heater. It can be done.
Well, I was going to say, I think the reason you were talking about the paths crossing and everything bringing you to here today, and I'll tell you what, you're helping even me, because I got so involved with the scientific community when it came to like seahorses and coral and such that I lost track of, hey, I'm going to learn more by doing, and I shouldn't just take everything that's said at face value. I love everything you're saying is right on and such good advice. So I really appreciate it, and you're helping me too. So, is there anybody aside from yourself and your fantastic channel? Is there any channels on YouTube that you personally watch, like that you watch for reefing advice or just to see what they're doing?
A lot of people know, because I'm not shy about it. A lot of people know that I don't really watch fish videos.
I'm guilty of doing the same, but go on. I'm curious though. What's your reason? Is there a reason, or you just are busy?
I don't know. It's just weird that they're not a massive interest for me, because I've got a very limited window for social stuff. You know what I mean? So to sit down and watch a video, I'm one of these type of people, where I don't tend to do things just for enjoyment. There always has to be something that I'm getting out of it, if you know what I mean. Where it's like, if I'm watching a YouTube video, it's because it's a how-to. It's how to do this. I'm learning something. That's why I'm watching it. I'll watch certain videos, like say for example CJ's Aquariums. I'll watch his videos, which are reef updates. Now, typically I don't watch reef updates because, I just don't, it's not something that ticks my box, but CJ's got a knack of doing them well. But there is the sort of like the Fab Three, or the Fab Four, including me. So you've got Inappropriate Reefer, Reef Dudes, and CJ's Aquariums. Those guys, Inappropriate Reefer, I'll watch because the way he creates his videos is what I like to watch. Now, the reason why I don't watch fish videos is because my actual interest is video making.
Gotcha.
So it's just the hobby is just falling in line with video making.
Mm-hmm.
So behind me here, for example, if we can turn it around, you can see that's my little.
Oh, nice.
So my camera's up there, my drones are up there, my audio board, and everything else. So my actual passion, so to speak, is video making. So I like to watch vlogs, and I like to watch how people create videos. So if somebody puts real effort into a video, whether it's a fish video or something else, then I'll watch. Now, Inappropriate Reefer puts a lot of effort into his transitions, puts a lot of effort into the story behind the video. So I'll watch that. Obviously, Reef Dudes as well, does all of he has good audio. He does a lot of stuff with his products and stuff like that. CJ obviously spends a lot of time on his videos and stuff like that. Then another channel that I just love to watch as well, actually. I say I don't watch fish videos, but I'm about to rattle off a load.
Go ahead.
Fan at Tidal Gardens. He's another one where whenever you watch the videos, you're getting something out of it, that ticks my box, because I know I'm going to walk away with some sort of information, some sort of new insight. You know what I mean? I'm going to walk away going, didn't know that. You know what I mean?
I noticed, he would, Tidal Gardens was one of the, had the very first of almost every video that's been repeated by everybody else. You know what I mean? So they're the people that you've named so far are definitely, I agree, 100%. They're my favorites. Did you have a longer list, or should we cut that off?
No, there's a lot more that that I'll watch. There's a guy that G'day Reefing, who's in the chat at the moment, pointed out to me, called Parker's Reef.
Mm-hmm.
He's Australian, so I've been checking out his videos, and he does some quite nice videos, and he's got a nice reef tank as well. It's just difficult, when you're on the spot, to say who
I know,
do you want?
And if you don't mention somebody, then you're in trouble. So
you didn't mention.
Let me ask more about you. I'm just curious, because I actually didn't know that you were so extremely interested in the video making side. I thought that the Reef kind of brought you to. I thought it was the reverse. So that's cool. I'm honestly the same way when it comes to these videos. I'm more interested in seahorses, obviously, but the videos very much interest me. What camera do you use? I know that's off the wall, but I'm curious.
So for actual video making, I use a Sony A7 III.
Okay.
For actual video making, for what I'm doing right now, it's the Logitech C Summit webcam.
I think
pretty good webcam.
I think that's the same one. Anyways, I was just curious. I was shopping for cameras, so that was totally off the.
Yeah, the Sony A7 III is a brilliant camera. It's not cheap, do you know what I mean? But it's a brilliant camera.
And is there anything else that you just have that has really made a difference in your experiences as far as the reef keeping goes? Meaning, I'm just thinking, when you set up your aquariums, do you focus on the filtration? Do you focus on, I know you're friends with crews, so I know most of the things you probably do, but is there anything in particular that every reef tank you set up, that's the focus to start off?
I would say
a weird question. Sorry.
I would say yes, tank to tank, because the last tank set up differently to this tank, because this tank, I've learned a lot from the last tank, if you know what I mean. So it's one of those where obviously each tank is a new experience. There is obviously the core foundations of setting stuff up, stuff, but I do things a little bit differently to other people. For example, some people will do what I call a traditional cycle, where they'll add a form of ammonia to the tank, like ammonia itself or a raw prawn, or they'll ghost feed the tank, which means just basically putting fish food into the tank every day as if there's fish there, but there isn't, and create ammonia that way. Whereas I don't do that. I put fish into the tank. Literally, as soon as that water's gone into the tank and it's all settled and it's all clear, fish go in straight away. You know what I mean? I use some form of bacteria, whether that's ATM Colony, Fritz Zyme 9, Fritz Turbo Start, Dr. Tim's One and Only, whatever, any of those. and then that's me away. So, but I do that on every tank. That's one thing that I can definitely say I've done from the beginning until now is I've always started with fish. And I've noticed over the past 2 years, really, the shift in attitude towards it. 2 years ago, if I was to say that I'm throwing fish in on the day one with bacteria,
Yep.
I'd be burnt at the stake.
Yep.
But now it's accepted because people are getting it a lot more. People, I think now with YouTube channels and Facebook pages, we've always, we've had forums, but forums, I've never really gelled with forums. I find them quite hard to navigate. But now with this easy accessibility to information and people explaining it to us in a way that we understand rather than all scientific and you're like, you know what I mean?
Right.
I think that helps a lot more for people to embrace certain things that they never would have embraced before. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I wanted to make a comment because of something said in the chat. Someone said something. Actually, still said something about putting the fish in right away. And this is something that I try to say often. Probably don't say it enough, but there's so many different ways to do things. This being a seahorse channel, things are a little bit different because seahorses are a little bit more delicate. And when your focus is the fish, it's different, than if your focus is the coral. Also, going along with everything you just said, I think there's been a big change in the bacteria. It's not so often that we find bacteria in a bottle that's actually the sludge buster. Now it's actually the cyclic, the nitro, the oh, I'm saying it wrong now. It's the right bacteria, so it's working now versus maybe so many years ago when the old school people had really bad experiences. So there's just so many ways to do things, and as you have pointed out multiple times, it's working for
Yeah.
you. So bottom line is it's work. Have you ever lost a fish doing it that way? Curiosity.
No, no,
See?
never.
I mean,
And the
yeah.
thing is I use a Senai as well. It's basically it's I don't know if you've ever used one before, but it's like an aquarium monitor.
Oh
I
yeah.
might even be. Let me see if I can. I'll see it. Can I share my screen on here?
Try. Feel
Yeah.
free. I'm all about trying.
All right, there you go. Right, so
Oh,
I
how
have this.
cool.
So I have this aquarium monitor here, and obviously it's got my temperature, it's got my pH, but best of all, it's got my ammonia level. So currently, my ammonia level is 0.003. Now that's basically undetectable ammonia. That's in essence zero ammonia. Ammonia doesn't become toxic until it hits 0.5.
Mm.
So you can see here how far away you are from that. Now, when I do my cycles the way I do them, the ammonia will reach 0.020, which again, if you was using a traditional titration test kit, just one in a box,
Mm-hmm.
you would never read that. So as far as you was concerned, you would have zero
Right.
ammonia. You know what I mean? You would never get that reading. Only with the Senai can you read lower than that. So somebody's just said, let me just switch this over. Oh, how do I stop it? There you go. Yes, somebody's just said in the chat something about being unethical, doing it. I don't know who said it. Somebody said before about doing the thingy about being unethical.
That's kind of
Well,
what I was talking about because I don't agree that
yeah,
it's unethical when you know what you're doing. It's, maybe, I don't know, especially with all the equipment that you have and that you're monitoring it, you're going to know things better than someone doing it old school. A lot of times the old school method doesn't work. And I say old school meaning the, let it sit forever because they're not putting the right amount of bacteria or they're not rising the ammonia level to the right levels to even cycle it properly and completely. So, there's different ways to look at everything. But go on with your answer. I'm sorry. What were you
I
going
was
to
just
say?
saying it's just like because the height of my ammonia is never really ever at a point where it's going to impact your fish or even your seahorses.
Right.
It's like all you're really doing is you're cutting out the first section of the cycle, which is the section of the cycle which is unethical to fish. When you put a fish into a tank day one with no bacteria, what you're in essence doing is you're putting it into a blank slate. And then when that fish starts to when it starts to produce ammonia from its gills, that ammonia goes into the fish tank and it stays there. There is nothing to remove it because there's no bacteria yet. There's no bacteria available yet. So as they, produce ammonia, that ammonia will build up and build up and build up until the point when that tank becomes toxic to that fish, and that fish in essence is killing itself. But what you're doing then is, as soon as that ammonia starts to be produced, then this bacteria will then come into existence. It will come into life, but it takes time. It takes time for this bacteria to go to large enough levels, to colonize to large enough levels, to be able to deal with the amount of ammonia that's being produced. All you're doing with a bacteria is you're cutting out that wait time for the bacteria to come in existence. So as soon as your fish starts producing ammonia from its gills, from its waste, etc., these bacteria stood there ready waiting, going, hoo, 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 come on, dinner time, lads. So by the time that ammonia comes out of that fish, it goes into the bacteria's belly, so to speak, and then it never gets to that level where it burns your fish, it hurts your fish. So it's, in essence, not unethical now, doing it where you put a fish into the tank on day one and don't throw any bacteria in, right, and allow the fish to sit there in its own waste and burn, then yeah, that's not a good way to do it. But with the bacteria being inputted, it's just the way I sort of like, and put the analogy on it is, nowadays you don't bake your own bread, do you? You go to the shop, right, you buy a loaf, it's still a piece, it's still bread. Do you know what I mean? The end goal is the selling. You still get your bacon butty or whatever it is that you're doing, but you've just not had to bake the bread. And that's the same with sort of like the bacteria. All you're doing is taking the baking process out, but everything else is the same. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's why that's one thing that I can take from all of the tanks that I've ever done is starting off that way.
Now I'm curious also I'll tell you now, Lucy's mentioned in the comments, I know I have personally used the same methods that you're talking about. You just explain it very well. And sometimes I don't want to lead anyone astray by explaining it incorrectly. You did a great job. But my question to you is, a lot of people don't always get the difference between like the nitrogen cycle and that marine algae cycle that comes afterwards. So I'm curious, in using the method that you use, do you have a lot of trouble with keeping nuisance algae away in the beginning because it doesn't go through that long drawn out process? Or do you use equipment? How do you combat that? What's your main way to deal with that? Go ahead.
So what I do is on the most part, apart from this tank, because I in essence sort of like had to add corals on day one, but normally what I would do is, again, it's sort of like bacteria and your hair algae will consume ammonia. So at the beginning of a tank's life, a lot of people are excited. They've got a new fish tank. They've got water in it. They've got whatever else in it. You know what I mean? It's like, ooh, I've got a couple of fish in or whatever. They want to have the lights on. You know what I mean? Now, hair algae grows via photosynthesis. You know what I mean? It needs a few things to live. Now, because we're flooding the tank with light, we're throwing in this artificial light, which is like as bright as the bloody sun. You know what I mean? And there is nothing there. So basically what's happening is you're not giving your tank time to create enough bacteria or colonize enough bacteria in the tank to outcompete the hair algae for ammonia. So what happens then is the hair algae grows because it's consuming the ammonia, and then it also consumes the nitrates and everything that are being produced, and it gets out of hand. So a good process really when you first start a tank is get your fish in, get your bacteria in, go through your initial cycle, and just leave the light off. Let everything, give it a month. It's difficult for a lot of people, but try and give it a month with no lights on. Let that bacteria find its feet. Let that bacteria establish itself. And then when you start turning the lights on, there'll be no ammonia available for the hair algae. You know what I mean? And then if you're running good filtrations, you've got good export, you've got a good way of getting those nitrates out of your tank or keeping them low, you've got a good balance, then there's no food. You know what I mean? You've taken away the food that it's going to eat. Either your bacteria is out competing it, or it's just not available. So you don't get any hair algae. So you do get that diatom stage where it's brown. that dirty brown stuff. You can get that. You can, in essence, get around that a little bit by not turning your lights on. But that's one big thing that I would say to people is just be patient. Don't turn your lights on, and then
Absolutely.
go for it. A
I,
bit of a pot kettle black for me because my tank's full of coral,
hey,
and it's only 20 days old.
I know. I wish you could go give us a close up. But CJ, hello, hello to Ray, hello to everybody joining. I did put a link up. Feel free to come on in if you want to chat. Show us your aquarium. Ask Aaron's aquarium a question. Anything, it's open at this point for anyone to jump in if you would like to and ask any questions or share anything. Now I've completely forgot. Oh, I almost forgot what I was gonna say. What it's gonna say is a video series that I've been working really hard on, and then lost the computer, didn't get it done. Blah blah, excuses. Bottom line is the using algae in the refugium to outcompete in the tank because that's always worked for me. Do you use any kind of scrubbers or refugium or anything like that in I know I got a peek, but show us again.
Look at that.
Point us down.
So that point down. There you go.
There. Oh, look at that. Of course. See, it's such the way to go. And that's that's my big answer. What were you saying? Go ahead.
I said that's just full of Chato.
Yeah. I mean, and do you do? Let's see. What kind of lighting do you put over it personally? What's the light that you got on there right now?
So that one is the Z-Light E200. That I've had so many lights, and that has been the absolute. I can't swear, but it's brilliant. That's the best. That's the best refugium light I've ever owned. I've had the ones off Amazon. I've had, the cheaper hydroponic ones and stuff like that. But I've even had a massive CFL, grow light bulb that you use for plants. I've even had one of those. That was all right, but it was stupidly expensive to run because it was 300 watts.
Yep.
But this, it's super low profile. It's just, it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb, and it's bright as hell. And I've just found out, I've had this light for months, talking God knows how many months. I only found out the other day there's an app for it, so I can control it as well.
Oh, wow, how cool. Hey, you know what? Okay, really quick, just to answer the questions in the comments in the question section, however you want to say it. CJ says they're going to riot if they don't get an update video from you soon.
DJ's already had an update video.
Okay. And someone said, can't riot because we've had too much Riesling. Hey, it's Wine Wednesday. Let's drink and get happy. And I know you want to tell us some more, so go ahead. But go ahead and tell us what you're going to show us. What are you going to show us right now?
Oh, no, I'm just opening it up so that you
okay.
can see while you're
Okay. And let's see. What kind of skimmer we got going on there? Just out of curiosity.
So this one's the new Max Spect skimmer. This is not released yet. It's not available yet. It should be available at the end of this month, I think.
Nice.
I've been a beta tester, so this is the demo version. So I've been using this for about the past 4 months as a beta tester, just working out the kinks and finding out what's good about it, what's bad about it, etc. And it's the new version that's been done off the back of this one's wicked. It's really good.
See, guys, and again, all these videos letting you know what he thinks about how the skimmer works, and the setup of the aquarium will be on his channel. He's just been kind enough to come share with us. So if you got questions, guys, he's willing to answer them. Ask away. And let's see. I was gonna ask you something else. I think the Merlot's getting to my head. Ugh. And I don't want to keep you too long, I know, because I really appreciate you coming in. I know it's late there. Oh, I was curious. What kind of it? You mentioned that the reason you went to YouTube and to the different groups and got involved is because of the fact that you didn't have anybody in your home that would share the love of reef keeping. What is it like in the UK? Is there reef clubs? Do you have a lot of experiences there, or no?
Not on the reef side of things. There's a few clubs and stuff for the freshwater guys, like the cichlid guys and stuff. But on the reef side, it's in the UK. in comparison to the States, that's why I like coming over to the States so much, because you guys just know how to do it over there. Here, it's still very, closed off. It's still very traditional. Like, you go to the shop, you buy the stuff. You don't go online. We don't have a live aquarium example for food, for fish and stuff. Everything's still, quite traditional. And even like, like when hobbyists get together, it's only when like a shop does an open day, or something like that, where they get a distributor in to show off their products. So it's not very it's not very open here. Obviously, being who I am and doing what I do, I have a lot of influence now in the UK. So what I've been trying to do is push these things, like, say for example, we've started doing frag swaps now. A local shop to me has started, opening their doors to allow us hobbyists to walk in with our own corals and swap between each other inside their premises. So that's a start. And then another shop as well has just done it. So more and more, we're starting to make that move and starting to get a little bit closer to what you guys are. But definitely, we don't really have clubs or meets or anything like that. So, like when I met you in Macna, I was like a kid at Christmas
Right.
when I was there. It was like everywhere I turned, I'm like, wow. I'm seeing people like Jason Fox. I'm seeing the guys from Worldwide Corals. I'm seeing, everybody else that's around there. And I'm thinking, these guys are like real. They're not on a screen. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, just so you know, everyone, including myself, felt the same about you. Meeting you was a great honor. I mean, so the same could be said about you. But thank goodness for the internet these days, because we are able to share across the entire world and get to see your aquariums and your experiences. I think it's really great. Um, and I had one more question. I know we're kind of jumping around here, but I had one more question, because I have not I do not have a lot of experience with the controllers. Is that something that you have used on aquariums from the very start, or was it difficult for you to learn?
As in like aquarium controllers.
Yeah, I'm sorry. As in the actual system controllers. I forgot how you pronounce Senye, or how did you pronounce
Oh,
it?
the Senai one.
Senai. Okay.
Yeah, the Senai is dead easy. The Senai is like, it's literally just USB. You plug it in, and away you go. That's it.
Really?
And yeah, all it is just this little thing. I think you can actually see it. Oh, you can't. It's falling over, and I'm not getting my hand in. But it's just this. It's just like a little bar of soap. Just this
Really?
tiny little thing. You stick it to the inside of your tank, and then it monitors your tank. It monitors your ammonia, it monitors your pH, your temperature, etc. I have mine in my sump, because also when it comes out of water, it sends you a text message to say it's out of water.
Nice.
So I'll put it at like the level where my return section runs, and then if something happens, like I run out of RO and I don't notice, it'll drop, and then I'll get a text message off that to say it's out of water. It's only cheap. It's only like $130 or something like that. And it's just a nice bit of kit to monitor the stuff that we don't monitor traditionally. Once we've done our initial cycles, how many of you guys in here right now can say that once you did that first cycle, you carried on monitoring your ammonia? I'll probably say everybody doesn't, unless they've got a Senai.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the amount of times that you could put some extra food into your tank, you could have a fish die or something that you've missed, and your tank just looks off, and you're checking your lights, you're checking your doses, you're checking this, you're doing that, doing the other. And it's the last thing to check is your ammonia, because nobody checks your ammonia. And you probably realize that sometimes that your ammonia's had a spike because, you've put too much food in, or your fish has died or whatever else, and it's caused a spike. But nobody thinks to check. And that's what's great about these, because it's just 24/7, just monitoring away, and if anything happens, you get a text message saying, your ammonia is creeping up, go and check your tank, or, your temperature's creeping up, go and check, or stuff like that. I've not had any experience with actual controllers like an Apex, for example.
Yes, that's what kind of, not saying, I mean, I think the Apex are awesome and everything, but and they sound amazing, but they sound complex. And I saw all these parts, and I said, "Oh, that's too much," because I have so many multiple tanks. But this sounds like a really good solution for
The
a little
Senai is
less.
great. Yeah, the Senai is great for stuff like what you were saying before. Do you know where you're saying about seahorses being a little bit more delicate and stuff like that? If you have a look, if you have a good scout on my channel, you will find a tank on there. It's called the Stable. I named
No.
that.
Okay. Tell
Yeah,
me.
and
Tell me more.
I had some hippocampus cuda
Oh
uh,
my gosh.
in there. So I did have seahorses, but it was for a very short period of time because if
What
I'm honest,
happened? What
it,
happened?
bored. It was boring.
Oh.
It was what it was it wasn't so much that they was boring because they were still young. And I've seen seahorses now where I've seen them where they're super active, they're swimming around, you know, blah blah blah. Mine were still babies. The biggest thing was for me, and you might be able to say to me like, "Oh no, you don't have to do that." You might be able to teach me it, but it was the feeding
No, yeah.
because it's like having a newborn baby for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? It's like because they don't have stomachs. I'm right with that.
Right.
Um,
Well, they don't have stomachs in the way that we know stomachs. Go
yeah,
on.
yeah. So it was like they need to be fed multiple times a day, don't they?
Yes, they do.
You can't skip a day.
The captive,
Uh,
I mean, captive bred erectus here over here. A lot of people are able to keep them with just 2 feedings of frozen foods a day. Um, I personally think it's a better situation when there's like 3 to 4 feedings, but we've gotten it to where it's not as bad as it used to be. I know that a lot of people who tried keeping seahorses previously will talk. Well, they had maybe wild caught seahorses and they had to feed live foods, or they were under the assumption that they had to feed 20 times a day or something. That's not true, but they do need a little bit more than just regular tossing some pellets. You have to want seahorses, so I understand. I'm not mad at you. You have to want them.
yeah.
And but Cuda are a favorite of mine too, so you're killing me. I'll have to go check out that video.
Well, that was it. It was like I think it was 2 weeks in, and it was like every day, twice a day. And I was thinking to myself, hold on a minute, what if I need to go on holiday?
Right.
You know what I mean? Then I've got to rely on somebody else to come to my house twice a day. And that's too much to ask of anybody. And then, I couldn't put like an auto feeder on the tank because you can't do an auto feeder for frozen food, and stuff like that. So it was like,
Yeah,
no.
you have to want seahorses. I mean, if there's any message I try to give, it's, seahorses are not difficult, but you have to want them. And I mean, come on now, coral just sits there. But no, I'm just kidding. They don't
No,
require, now, how much, okay, that's a good question. What kind of feeding do you do for your coral? Is there any particular products that you're fond of? Not products, but foods that you're fond of as far as coral food, since that's your main squeeze, what you like?
I've never been a coral feeder.
Really?
No, I've never really. Maybe it's something that I need to do. I don't know, but obviously corals. When I feed the tank with the fish,
Hmm.
whatever comes off, any of the little bits, the corals will get a hold of. Obviously, there's zooxanthellae that lives within the coral.
Yep.
That will take my light and feed it to the coral. And photosynthesize it into sugars and stuff for the coral to feed. So I've never really, felt the need to actually physically feed the system because I've always as well had quite high nitrates in my reefs. I've always hovered around 25 nitrates in every single tank I've ever owned.
Hmm.
So because it's been that way, I've never really, needed to feed them anything extra because I'm
Gotcha.
just putting more waste into the tank. You know what I mean? So
If it's
no,
working, it's working. That's my main thing these days is I don't question anybody's methods if it's working. If I see your tank and it's working, hey, it's working. And is there any particular coral? I'm just thinking because you don't feed and that kind of thing. Is there any particular coral that's been difficult for you thus far?
elegans corals or cataphilias,
Mm,
never been able to never. It's just like I can keep them for a short period of time, but they always just shrivel up.
You know,
eventually.
that's the one coral that I lost too. That I mean, I could not
I
keep.
don't.
I've lost more than that, but that coral was the one that I just could not do well with. So I'm totally there with you. Is there any
I've
coral?
even fed those. I've
Uh,
even fed them. I've fed them. I've
yeah,
done everything, and I just can't keep them.
yeah. I think I did. It's been a few years, but I did read up. You know that it depends on where it comes from, and you know, getting a healthy specimen is so important. But I personally gave up. I admit it. Is there any particular coral that you're, aside from elegance, obviously, that you're planning on trying that's different in the one?
Just more higher end corals, like in the past, like say for example, zoas. I'm not a big zoa person, and I probably won't be in this tank. But just as an example, in the past, if somebody was to come to me and say, "You want to buy this single zoa for £50 or £100, or let's say dollars, for example, $50 for a single head of zoa," I'd be like, "Don't be stupid. I can get one of these Vietnam colonies that are no name zoas, but it's loads of them for $50. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So no, but now I see everything in that tank now as an investment. You know what I mean? I see everything in there. I don't see it as just a coral. I see it as an investment now as well. So that $50 zoa, well, that $50 zoa is going to turn into two zoas at some point. So I've got my $50 back, and I've still got the zoa. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So with the SPS corals that go in here, there isn't going to be a coral really where I'm going to say to myself, "Oh no, I'm not spending money on that," because if it has value, then I'm going to get it because I see it as an investment, like home wreckers, Walt Disney's,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. A year ago, I'd have laughed in your face if you offered me one, but
Right.
now I'll be like, right, give it me. You know what
And
I mean? So, go on.
is it difficult for you? Do you already, if these questions are off bounds, just let me know. But do you sell coral right now?
No, no, no.
I mean, do you
Never.
plan
I've
to?
never. Maybe. Who
More of a
knows?
trade kind of thing is what you're thinking
No,
of?
I don't know. I would like to. I would like to think that eventually I'd like to be able to do something like Jason Fox or something like that, where I have a selection of corals where people want them because it's an Aaron's Aquarium coral.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And do that. So I don't think I'd ever be selling coral to the masses. You know what I mean? It'd be more just sort of like
Specialized.
just specialize, yeah, where, like I said, if the whole plan for this tank goes to the way I want it to, in a couple of years' time, I'll have a real stunning reef. And then when people are like, wow, look at that tank.
When
Do you
it's
want
the
a piece?
Google picture that comes up for beautiful reef, the one. Yes, go on.
Exactly. And
And
then
you'll,
people are saying, I want a piece of coral out of that tank. Well,
yeah.
even if it's a forest fire, for example, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But it's not just a forest fire. It's a forest fire from the one. You know what I mean?
I do know.
So
It's just like the oh gosh, I'm gonna forget the name. Cruz is gonna kill me. What was the Langsai Monty?
Montiflora,
Yeah, there was a
the length.
name though. Was it called Langsai? No. Yeah, maybe it
Yeah, it
was.
was called the Langside Montiflora.
Okay, like that. I got you. Like that was special. Other people could have something similar, but it was not the one. So I got your point. Um,
Yeah.
and it has the lighting that I know you mentioned the lighting. And again, go check out the video to see his aquarium set up on Aaron's Aquarium on YouTube. All the videos are there. Salty's put the link a couple times. We'll put it in the description. But is lighting extremely important to your goals now that
Oh
you're
yeah.
trying to do? And
Yeah.
what is the name of the lights that you're using? And is it new? I can't see very well.
No, it's not that new to be honest. It's the Max Spec RSX lights.
Okay,
It's a new version to the Razor, basically.
gotcha.
So at the moment I'm using 3, but I'm going to see how 3 go because it's going to be SPS dominant. I'm currently getting like at the top section up there, I'm getting around 300 par, but I'm going to see how it gets on. And if they want, a bit more light because it's all SPS, especially once the coral starts to go and it gets a bit denser, I may add a 4th. I'll see how it goes. But yeah, at the moment, they're perfectly fine for what I need, and they'll do the job as it stands. But if it needs just that little bit more oomph, I'll probably add a fourth one.
Gotcha, gotcha. I'll be curious, and I'll be. I am guilty of not watching YouTube videos very often too, but I'll be following this tank because it's the one. And one of the huge things that I had difficulties with in my mixed reef when I got into SPS was placement. Just trying to learn and figure out exactly where it needed to go, under what lighting, and so on. So I'll be curious to see how it goes with you. Um,
I've lost coral before now because just simply because I've put it in the wrong place. There's another YouTuber from the UK called Reef Community Worldwide who gave me some really good advice once, and this is a great thing as well. Is just hobbyist to hobbyist sharing just experiences. And he said to me once that when you get a coral, frag it. Say if you buy a nice colony or whatever else, or you've got it's big enough for you to be able to just frag a piece off it. He said to me, like, put the piece where you want it to be, put the main piece where you want it to go, and then take this frag and put it somewhere completely different, some like to the other end of the tank or something, just so that you can see. So, like, say, for example, if that piece doesn't like where it is and it dies, at least you've got a little bit of it still left. Or vice versa, you put the other one down there and it doesn't like it, then then, right, I don't put that type of coral in that area. Do you know what I mean? So
That's
that was
really good advice. I'm sorry, that's extremely good advice. I wish I had done that. um, and guys, I'm gonna give the sound off. I've kept him for a very long time, and it's like in the middle of the night over there in the UK. So if anybody wants to jump in, please do so quickly, or I'm going to, let him go. But is there anything else that you can think of that you would just particularly like to share about any of your experiences with aquariums?
Biggest thing is just if anybody is a salt, is a seahorse keeper or a reef keeper or anything else, just it's just one of those. Is like I said, just always ask the question why. You know what I mean? Just always ask the question why, and never take anything for granted. Never wait for something to happen before you test. Try to do things not as a reaction. You know what I mean? Because by the time that you're reacting to something, it can be too late. If you see horses looking a little sluggish, a little lethargic, and you don't know why, and it turns out your ammonia is high or your oxygen levels are low or something like that. If you're testing for it before that happens, then the seahorse never gets to, a point where it's struggling. You know what I mean? So biggest thing for me is never be lazy with your testing. That's a big thing. I've been lazy in the past and it just costs you money and it costs lives sometimes. So, test your tank. That's the biggest thing I can say. Just test your tank at least once a week.
And have a quarantine tub, right?
and that is a big thing that I can now say with pride. Quarantine your fish.
Did you used to be one of the people that was like, I don't need that. I can just, whatever.
Up until about 2 months. Was it 2 months? Might even not even be that long. Yeah.
Really?
I've always been one of those people where I've said to myself, I don't have the space for a quarantine tank. I don't have a tank. I can't. It's too much messing to set up a quarantine tank. So I've always made up excuses as to why I can't. But then I've gone out and bought expensive fish like Achilles tangs and stuff like that. Put them in my reef tank straight away. They've got white spot. They've died. Do you know what I mean? And then I've gone, and then it's like, and then I've done it again with another fish, and again and again, and I've lost hundreds and hundreds and maybe even thousands of pounds in fish when I could have done what I've done. I'll see if I can show it. I could have just done this, which is there. See it in the corner.
Yeah.
That it's a plastic storage tub that you put your shoes in or whatever else. 2 hang on the back filters and a heater. And then I've just got some biomedia in there. You can see a purple tank swimming around. I've just got some biomedia in there for biofiltration. Obviously, the hang on the back's for mechanical filtration. Ooh, and that's it. It's that simple.
Yep.
And it cost me how much would the hang on the back filters were £12. So let's say $12. You
Mm.
know, so $24 for the two. But obviously, if you're using a small one, you only need one. You know, the tub itself was about 15 quid, $15, let's say. So, you know, all in all, with the heater and everything else, it's no more than $50. You know
Yep.
what I mean? And once it's done, I can just pack it all away and I can use it for something else. I can put my shoes in it.
Don't
Do
put
you
your
know what I mean?
shoes in it, please. No, I'm just kidding. Matthew Sykes wants to know: do you quarantine inverts in coral too, or just fish, or
That
what's your
is
method?
something that is my potential next project. I've got in that cupboard behind there. That is now basically it used to just be a storage cupboard. My stairs run down that way, so it's an under the stairs cupboard basically in there.
Okay.
So I'm going to set up a tank in there, which will be a potential coral quarantine tank. At the moment, no. What I do is I just dip the crap out of corals. You know, dip it, and dip it again. You know what I mean? Before it goes into the tank. Now, again, rolling the dice a little bit doing that, but the difference between quarantining corals and inverts to quarantining fish is huge. You know, quarantining coral is a second reef tank. You know what I mean? A reef tank that needs to be water changed, a reef tank needs to be dosed, a reef tank that needs expensive lights above it to be able to, to color and grow or just keep the corals alive. You know what I mean? Whereas that cost me $50 to set up. It doesn't even need a light. You know what I mean? I don't have to put a light on it. Even to set up a coral quarantine system, it needs to be monitored, maintained, and the expense, so you're talking hundreds to do that. So that's the difficulty with thingy. And even money aside, it's a second reef. You know what I mean?
Right. The Salty Reef is in the comments, and he mentioned that he quarantines everything. Salty, please, feel free to jump in. Tell us how you managed to do that without having an entire other reef, because it truly is. I've seen pictures of people's quarantine tanks that are prettier than my reef. I mean, and have more equipment. So I'm just curious, how different people do different things. Aaron, Michael, has it ever been a problem for you? Have you ever had any issues with coral that make you think that you need to do this, or are you just doing it because it's,
Do you know why I'm doing it?
why?
YouTube pressure.
The pressure
If
of
I'm honest,
YouTube. Hey,
the pressure of YouTube.
but you
That's
know
it.
what? It might be saving you from some really bad things. So I'm all about quarantine. So I don't
I
judge
don't know.
anybody. But
Because I've never see again. It goes back to the sort of like the first question that you asked me about fish.
mm-hmm.
All of the fish that tend to go into my tank are worker bees. Now, obviously, like I said, I dip the corals, and then when the coral goes in, I'll have things like I always have plenty of wrasse in the tank. So if there's any flatworms on there, or anything like that, they'll pull them off and eat them. I always do stuff like that. I tend to have fish that I'll do a job for a certain thing. You know what I mean? And then, if Asterina stars get into the tank, which they always manage to somehow,
yes.
you can just get yourself a harlequin shrimp for a couple of days, let it eradicate the stars and take it back out again and, trade it or take it back to the shop. So there's certain things when it comes to coral and inverts where, it's one of those where I find it difficult to warrant quarantining them, but at the same time, I do see the value in it. You know what I mean? I definitely do see the value in it. So
I'm totally with you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm completely with you. I mean, there is a huge difference. Couldn't agree more. Matthew was asking I think he was asking you, what do you use to dip your coral?
he knows exactly what I
I
used to do
know.
with Carl. That's why he said it.
Well, he's helping me because people watching this channel might not know. So, what is
Yeah.
it? Something you don't want to share?
No, it's fine. It's just it's a regular old household detergent. It's called
Gotcha.
Dettol.
That's what
I
he
don't know
said.
I think you call it Lysol over there.
Lysol?
Maybe.
Now wait a minute.
That's a guess. So it's basically a brown liquid which you use to disinfect your what surfaces, or you can mop your floor with it, or you can use it to disinfect cuts, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
Wow.
Lysol. I don't know if it's that, but that's basically what I use.
Huh.
Um,
And no damage to the coral so far.
no, I've been doing it for 2.5 years. I've even got a video on the channel doing
Yeah, see, check out that
it.
channel. I keep saying it, but that's awesome. I mean, if you heard somebody say bear 3 years ago, you would have gotten some pretty evil stares and been called, immoral and everything else. But now we know that that's okay too. So you just never know. And I
There's
think
a
it's
lot of
great that you question everything and go and find new ways of doing things. Very, very good.
well, so there's a lot of products out there which you'll find are available, from day to day. You know what I mean, in
Yeah.
different aspects of our lives. And but a lot of people are just not confident enough to use certain products because it doesn't have a fish label on it. You know what I mean? Which is
Yep.
fair enough. You know what I mean? So, but it's one of those where people, disclaimer, if you do use that product, at your own risk.
Right. No,
So
absolutely. Dan, I did see your comment that you're in and out. That's okay. The reason I didn't send you a link is because we were doing Reef chat. I didn't think that would really tickle your fancy. But Dan, actually, for anybody who's a seahorse person watching, is all about peroxide. We'll have to get him in here sometime to tell you about all the things he does with peroxide. It's incredible. So, and of course,
right.
a lot of people in the reefing industry use peroxide for different things too. But you just never know. Couldn't agree more. And I saw that Salty in the comments said that you don't have wrasses or the worker fish, and that's why you have to quarantine everything. Quarantine's always a good suggestion. I personally literally had someone come to buy coral from me at my house, and I was taking the coral out, and he said, "Oh my gosh, you have flatworms in your refugium." And I said, "What? No way." I mean, the tank had been running for 5 years, and whatever. It was because the wrasses in the display, and it was just the non harmful, just pain in the butt pests down in the refugium. But it was the flatworms were there, and I didn't even notice them because the wrasse was constantly doing his job. So there's something definitely to be said for worker fish. I definitely agree. Um, yeah.
I like what the Salty Reef has said as well about quarantine. He or she, I'm not sure, but quarantines for
He.
3 weeks. He
Yep.
more to observe and inspect than anything, and that is a big thing that I do for the fish as well. I don't medicate my fish unless they need medicating. Like at the moment, I've added a purple tang to that quarantine system, and the purple tang was showing signs of white spot when I bought it. Now, normally I would go, I'm not buying that, but
Right.
because obviously I've got a quarantine system, I'm okay to buy it. So that quarantine system is now running cupramine to cope with that white spot. But the main thing for quarantine is exactly what the Salty Reef has said. It's just monitor, and just see that if everything's okay after a certain period of time, then you're okay to just put it in your system. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like with us, we don't take antibiotics just in case. You know what
Right.
I mean? We
Right.
don't take medications just in case something's going to happen. We take them to remedy something. So I know some people may argue with that and say, I'd rather put a fish into a cupramine or a copper, quarantine, whether it's got something or not. But the only thing doing that is you've got potential of sort of like reducing the fish's life
Yeah.
with copper, with medication. So, if it's not necessary, it's best not to do it. So, if you can put it in quarantine for a month or so and just make sure that, there's no spots coming out, there's no flukes or anything like that, then, if everything looks golden, then yeah, transfer it. But if it doesn't, then you could either set up a separate one, which is solely just for medication.
Yes.
So you keep your medicated fish to the side and still keep your other ones or whatever else.
It can get
I,
complicated, and there are there's something to be said for the type of fish too. Some fish, I know that there's research saying that they don't and they do and blah blah blah. But the bottom line is there are certain fish that just seem to be more prone. Maybe it's that they get more. I bet you it's like seahorses; they get more stressed out or something like that. But the bottom line is they're just more prone to have problems, and those fish, might have a different situation. Whereas, like with seahorses, the main key is keeping them de-stressed, and that's what you described it, and what Salty Reef is describing is my quarantine method too. Just observational quarantine and only hospitalization quarantine if necessary. So, because you don't want to throw medicines. I couldn't agree more at a fish, just
Mm.
unless there's a problem. Um, let's see, Matthew, or no, someone asked, how long would you recommend quarantining corals for, and how many dips? Like you said, you do 3 dips, is that right?
So when it comes to dipping, I'll tend to, I'll do a dip and then, see how it goes. If it looks like, I might need another dip, then I will do, I'll give it a bit of a rinse off and then I'll do it again, and stuff like that. But if it was a quarantine procedure, then I'd probably, my approach, and I don't know how, if this is a good approach or not, because I've never done it, but my idea would be, I would be looking at around a 4-week period. Obviously, there'd be no fish or anything in my quarantine system. It'd just be corals. And then at least once a week, I'd be dipping the coral, maybe even, a couple of times a week. I'd be taking the coral out of that quarantine system, giving it a dip again, making sure nothing's come off, back into the quarantine system, and then doing that frequently for 4 weeks. And then, if nothing's come off it every single time during that period of time, then, obviously I would be a lot more confident that there's nothing on it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Well, four
I
weeks
always,
isn't 4 weeks. I'm sorry, I interrupted. 4 weeks is the typical. Most pests don't have a life cycle that goes past that. So, I mean, that's
yeah, four
probably
to six weeks
go
and
on
stuff.
with what you're saying. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, that's it. So, I do that. And then obviously with the dip as well, it's a bit of a turbo charge as well to, to break down anything that's potentially there. And then I, potentially look at moving it from then. Again, I've never done it before, so I don't know if that is a good approach or not. I don't know whether it should be 6 weeks or longer. I don't know. But that's how I'd approach it, for me. Especially, it'd be more, my quarantine would be, again, just more for monitoring and everything else. And it wouldn't so much be quarantining against fish parasites like white spot and stuff like that. If that happens, it happens. The surface area of a coral, a lot of the times as well as I'll remove a coral from whatever base it's on. So if it's on a frag plug, unless it's like properly encrusted over the frag plug, I'll remove it off the frag plug. If it's like a cultured one that's on a little stone,
Mm-hmm.
I'll remove it from the stone, so that if there is a potential for white spot parasites to be incubating in the stone or something like that, I get rid of that. But then, do it that way. But if it's encrusted and stuff like that, for a parasite to be on the coral itself, it's not very likely, you know what I mean? So a couple of dips and stuff like that, it'd be more just for any red bugs, flatworms or anything else like that to get rid of those.
Sure.
So that's
Well,
what I,
yeah, because most of the fish parasites and such need the fish host, right? I mean, I understand there's life cycles, they drop off, they come on, blah blah blah. They could be on a coral, but the chances are much lower, I would guess. So,
yeah,
I think your idea sounds fantastic. um, let's see if there's
hopefully it
any.
works.
Oh, I forgot. Holly wanted to know how many gallons the new tank is. Again, well, how many gallons is the one?
So the tank itself is 150 gallons, just the
Mm-hmm.
tank, and then obviously the sump and everything else. It's a total of 600 liters. So I don't know. That's with displacement as well. So the actual water that's in the system right now, with all of the rock and the skimmer and everything, is 600 liters. So I've not got a clue what that is in gallons.
And I hate
But
that. I hate that. I'll have to go salty. Go calculate it, man. Hey, Reef
Google
dudes, come on in if you want. We're just chit chatting at this point. I've drilled him with all my questions, so I'll put up that link
it.
one more time because it is the middle of the night for him. So probably won't keep going streaming much longer. But here is that link if you do want to jump in and just say hey. But we don't have anything in particular. We're just chatting. And he's
Yeah.
showing us the one. It's been a great. interview. By the way, what if people want to follow Aaron's Aquarium and follow all of your adventures and see the one go from this beautiful startup to the Google representation of a reef tank? What are they best to go to YouTube, or I noticed you put something on Facebook saying that your focus is YouTube, correct? Or
So my
Instagram?
main focus, yeah, so the main focus is YouTube. That's where, all of my best content goes, my properly produced videos, stuff like that will be YouTube. Live streams and stuff like that is YouTube. But then my go-to daily, my day-to-day, just getting stuff out is Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. Facebook is like my third most, focused on one. Although, Facebook gets just as much love as Instagram, but Instagram's the one. If you want to, definitely with this tank behind me, if you want to keep up with it in real time, Instagram's a place to be, because I'm always popping up pictures of the tank covered in crap, or the test results, or just pictures of this and that and the other. So if you want to really sort of like follow the tank and get stuff that you're not even going to get in the YouTube videos, because the YouTube videos are normally around 15 minutes long, and trying to get everything into a 15-minute long video, it's borderline impossible. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make the video, which you'll see on Instagram, so you can check it out there.
I'm just, instead of typing, which is rude, I'm just gonna say Martin. Yes, I did just put up a join link. Unfortunately, I just got my computer back today, so I haven't investigated any further getting people in here from Facebook. So you have to go to YouTube in order to join. Reef dudes, hello, hello. How are you? And what are your thoughts on the one? No, I'm just kidding. How are you doing tonight?
I'm happy that Michael finally found one he wants to as a keeper. Makes me happy inside.
Now, see, I don't watch the videos often enough, and he did mention that he gets bored easily. Have we seen him switch on and on and on, or what?
Michael never.
Ah. Hey, it's good for entertainment. Reef dudes, how are you? What's up tonight?
Not too much. Just hanging out. Did live
Nice
stream
and early
earlier.
for you, isn't it?
It's 6:30. It's what, like 2 a.m. for you?
I know.
2:30 in the morning now for me.
I appreciate the dedication.
I want
to say thank you again so much, Michael, because when I asked you to come and you mentioned how late it would be, I was like, oh my gosh, and I didn't want to interrupt actually Reef Dude's stream by going earlier, but I really, really appreciate you coming in and spending so much time with us and showing us all of this cool stuff. We were just discussing quarantine, Reef Dudes, and lots of stuff like that. So he's walked us through quite a bit. And did your stream go well?
It was a good one today.
It was Cruise, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
Nice and interesting, wasn't it? I like watching that one.
Yeah, it was good. It's one of those topics that a lot of people struggle with, so I figured it'd be good to drag them on and dive into it in depth and answer a bunch of those questions that people always tend to have. So,
gotcha. And Aaron, you have I'm sorry, I keep calling you Aaron. I keep calling you Aaron's Aquarium. Michael, sorry, Michael. What do you focus on in your live stream? What can people expect from your live stream that you
do? Complete and utter chaos. My live streams are basically all it is. It's a free for all. We start the live stream, and all it is just me and you and everybody else, just in essence, shooting the shiz. We just get in there and we just have a laugh. People will ask questions along the way. I'll talk about whatever it is that I've got to talk about, whether it's my tank or whatever else. But really, it's just a Friday night where we can all just kick back, a bit like you with your wine. We can kick back, we can get a takeout, whatever, and we can just have a giggle together. You know what I mean? So
I'm really feeling like I need to go back to the reef world, to being focused on the reef world, because these seahorse people are just strict. They want guests and facts, and I'm like, can't we just drink some wine? But no.
Not for me. It's just literally just the case. All it is for me is just we start the stream, and for the next 3 hours, which it tends to be, for the next 3 hours, we just have a giggle. I don't do hangouts and stuff. It's just me on camera talking to the guys in the chat, you know, and just having a laugh, you know. There's always something that sets me off, some innuendo, something that makes me giggle. Reef Dudes did it to me the other day on his stream, set me off. So
tell me what happened.
I'm childish as hell. So certain words are like the opposite to safe words. As soon as you say them, I just go off.
You just see one little giggle, and you know you can totally play off it. And Michael's just, it's great.
Well, this is the thing now as well. People have been watching the streams long enough now that they'll say certain words, and they know if they catch me at the right time, it's game over. I've got the giggles. You know what I mean? Just some sort of innuendo word. They might even say it in a proper innocent way. You know, like you said it before, something about see, this is my problem. But you said something before that, and I was being dead professional. I didn't start giggling. I was quite proud of myself actually, because you were saying about something about something's hard on. All I heard was hard on, and I was like.
Well, you did a fantastic job covering that up. I gotta tell you.
I'm very proud of myself. I'm very proud of myself. If that was on my live stream, game over. I'm shutting the stream down.
See, I think that's a lot of fun, though. I like, you know, when a lot of people join and have fun, and you know, there of course is a time when we need to bring in facts and help people with their seahorses, but you know, having this kind of stream is just great. Hey, Reef Dudes, what you drinking?
Nothing, sadly.
Ah,
Terrible. I know.
you guys are
I know.
just terrible. Seriously.
I should have wine. I know it was bad planning. I literally just came on the computer and I saw your live, so I figured I'll hop on for a bit.
And I appreciate you. Anything you want, and this is Michael's stream, sorry, but anything going on with you that you want to tell us about? Anything new with your big system and all that good jazz? I've already admitted I don't watch enough of my friends' YouTube videos, so sorry.
Tisk tisk. Yeah, I don't know. Things are going well. Nothing specifically. My mic keeps falling. I need to fix this. No. Overall, it's been good. Nothing overly new exciting. My filter roller finally ran out. It's on my to-do list for later, and that's it. Nothing exciting.
What
It's happy. It's growing.
Someday I'd like to get people like Michael and you and everyone into one stream and just have everybody discuss, you know, what they prefer in, you know, as far as equipment and things like that, because I know you guys all test different things, and it's always fascinating to me to, you know, see the different products that you test and what each of you thinks is best, you know. Do you find that you guys agree a lot?
No, not me and him.
That's why I like having Michael on, because we have different opinions.
He's probably one person I actually do agree with quite often. We're very similar, especially with our tech stuff. But he's a little bit more techie than me when it comes to our reef tanks, like aquarium controllers, like we were talking about earlier on. You know, I'm just embracing them now, which I don't think I'm allowed to talk about yet. Am I, Dave?
Better late than never. No.
I know, but yeah, we're I'm beta testing a controller at the moment, which you know, I think they've purposely given it me because they know I'm a complete and utter noob when it comes to controllers. So if I can use it, anybody can.
That's I mean, hey, I asked you that earlier because I really want to, you know, dive into that, but I'm super worried because I'm not very good with the technical stuff. I have to watch you guys' videos just to learn, and so I'll be following along. And let me know what you think of what you're testing when you
This
can talk about it.
This one's so, like, literally, this one is like, it's idiot proof. It's like on off. Do you know what I mean? It's just switches and sliders, job done.
Sorry.
Do you feel extra techie now?
What'd you say?
I said, does it make you feel extra techie now?
I do. I feel like, you know what I mean? I feel like a proper reefer now.
Excellent, love it.
Now, now with these controllers, the one question I do have, and you don't have to give names if you don't want, if it's not time yet, but is there specific? Do they all take care of temperature? Is temperature a key thing that they monitor on everything? Like the one you were showing us earlier, Michael. Does it show you the temperature also?
Yeah, so it tells you the temperature. It can even control your temperature. You know, if your temperature gets high, it'll turn the heater off. If your temperature gets too low, it'll turn the heater on, etc. It'll do all that lot. So yeah, yeah, it does. It does. It does. It's an aquarium controller. So it does all of the things that an aquarium controller does. You know what I mean? It's just easy.
Well, that was my big fear, was that it just looked, all of the things that, all the attachments and all the, oh, there's a new model out and you have to attach it to this model. I don't know. I just need to sit down with you guys someday and really learn more about them, because they scare me still. I'm a step behind you, I guess. But
I'm Dave, trust me. I'm only that much further on. That's it. I've still not even worked out how to plug things into it yet. So
Baby
I've got it on. I've got it on, and I've gotten it doing the basics. But that's as far as I'm at so far.
Hey, we'll take it. You're moving in the right direction. Hey,
We're moving on.
Reef Dudes, you're an excellent interviewer. Is there anything that I haven't asked of Michael, or you haven't even been watching? What am I saying? Or is there anything?
I only caught this last 20 minutes, so I got nothing.
Shoot.
What do you want to know? I'll ask him for you. What would you like to know?
Well, if I knew what I wanted to know, I would ask myself. That made a bunch quick. That was great. No, I got my computer back late, and I meant to advertise this a lot sooner so that people could know to come, and I didn't let anybody know until like 2 hours ago. So
I would like to know what exactly Michael's rock is made out of, and how hard he thinks it'd be to DIY some.
It's ceramic. That's all I know.
Like pottery ceramic, or like?
I think so. I just been told it's ceramic. So it's the work that went into it. Like I was sent pictures step by step as it was being built, and it's at the moment it looks like. Do you know? Is it Reef Saver rock or Marco rock?
Yeah,
that's what it looks like in the tank. It looks like it's been built from that, but what he's done is he's built like this Play-Doh type scape. It just looks smooth, and it just looked like it was made from like dough, if you know what I mean, like that type of thing. But then once he's finished it, he's added texture to it. You know, he's added like sprinkles of grit and over to make it look like real true rock. You know what I mean? So it looks natural as anything. You know what I mean?
I like it.
Yeah, it does. It looks really, really good. So the process that went into it was a lot. And for the money that you pay for it, to do it yourself, you know, I won't even bother. Personally.
I'm really super curious now about the process, because I did talk with, I think, Real Reef Rocks or something like that. I'd have to look, but the bottom line is they talked about a process of actually like cycling the rock ahead of time, you know, drying it, cycling it, or making it, and then like putting it into a situation where it gets cycled, and then of course it does lose some of that in shipping and everything, but it's at least not that completely just made rock. Because in my situation, I had rock made for my 65-gallon seahorse tank, and I love it still to this day. It's amazing, but I did have a lot of trouble, even though I used the same methods I used in all tanks. I had a lot of trouble with it, with nuisance algae, just because, I don't know, it just never really, like, it's something about the inner parts of the rock, because I don't know for sure, but I'm curious about the process. Have you ever heard of anything like that, either one of you?
Depends on what rock you use and whatever, you know, like some rocks which are like ceramic rocks or whatever can be made with certain materials that can potentially leach out, you know, certain things which could cause you an issue. Most of the proper brands like Real Reef Rock and other stuff like that, you know, you're not got to worry about those types of things at all. You can put them straight into your tank on day one, you know, like what I do. You know, I would literally get a box of Real Reef Rock and I would put it into my tank, scape it all out, fill it up with water, put my bacteria in, put my fish in, job done. And there'd be no issue with leaching because it's manufactured. Do you know what I mean? Like the Marco rock as well, which is mined on land. It's not come from the sea or anything else like that. The thing with these modern rocks nowadays, like live rock, proper live rock though, not like when you've bought it from your mate's tank. I mean like proper live rock from like Australia or whatever else. Over the years, that rock has become more and more porous by, you know, water penetrating it and, you know, breaking through it and stuff, and animals, you know, burrowing through it and blah, 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 and just creating loads of, you know, just holes and surfaces available for stuff. Whereas the rocks that we're using now, the porosity isn't anywhere near what you could get back then with the decent live rock. But at the same time, we're in another sort of like new era now when it comes to setting up tanks, where the display itself is a display. It's not a filter. Rocks that go into the play tank now are not, in my mind, considered as filtration, although they will partially work as filtration. For me now, I go for biomedias. You know, I will put a media in my sump, whether it's, you know, I use the MaxSpec media, but you've got things like Biohome media, you've got Cyperax, you've got Seachem Matrix, you've got all of these different types of media, which are specifically designed for bacteria to live in, to call their home, and do your nitrogen cycle for you, you know, do all the other different types of things for you, and they'll all live there. So all of your bacteria is centered there. So your rock itself, you can have as much or as little rock as you want, because it doesn't matter, because
So
it's
really,
not there.
it's more like a decoration. You're not looking for that anaerobic bacteria in the middle of the rock. It's just a decoration, but it happens to grow the, you know, aerobic bacteria on the outside and do a little helpfulness, but you couldn't just have that and not have extra filtration in a sump or filter, right?
You could do, you know, like if you've got, it's a bit like the Berlin method, you know, where you used to have tons of rock so that you could use the rock as a filter.
Yes.
Whereas nowadays, a lot of us are going for more minimalistic scapes. You know, I've got a minimalistic scape. Reef Dudes has got a minimalistic scape. So what that does in essence is it takes a rock, which is, oh, just 1 second, the battery's about to run out.
Go ahead. Reef Dude said, you ever heard that?
Heard what? Which part?
Just having trouble with, I'm not talking about real reef rock. I'm not talking about rock that was dried and then, you know, recycled or even collected. I'm talking about real man-made rock having more trouble with algae.
When a lot of the rock that they make, they use like a porcelain cement, and they make it in like sand molds, and they do it that way of doing it. And usually it's the concrete, so it can mess with your pH and your alk in certain things for a while. So a lot of times they'll want to soak it in water for like a month to let that stuff leach out.
Oh, gotcha.
So there it's usually
so
it's usually more pH type of alkalinity issues for the first while until that finishes leaching off. That's part of like the cement curing for some of the man-made stuff.
Gotcha. And I'm sorry, Michael, did you want to finish what you were saying? I apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just saying that, you know, obviously nowadays using rock in our display as a filter, obviously it's not, the rocks that are out there now are not as much as an efficient filter as the live rocks, you know, because obviously there's not as many holes and pores and stuff in these new modern rocks, because they've just not been, you know, subjected to the stuff that creates it. But again, you know, you don't need it now anyway, so you can spend less money on rock. You know what I mean? You don't have to spend on kilos and kilos and have this big rock wall which you're not happy about, but you just feel you've got to have. You know, now you can buy yourself a bag of media or a couple of blocks or whatever else it is that you want, get all your bacteria there, and you could run a display tank with no rock at all if you wanted to. You know, obviously barring homes for fish, you know, you could put a load of bleeding SpongeBob houses and stuff in there if you wanted, as long as it was reef safe, and that'd be perfectly fine. Do you know what I mean? Because your filtration area, your sump or your canister filter, that's where your filtering's happening now. So you can get really, really sort of like, what's the word? What do you say? Creative. That's it. You can get really creative with your aquascapes now, because you're not fixed to having tons of rock, so you've got a filter. You can just, like, you know, obviously how creative this scape is, you know, just really thin, really, you know, just sweeping and stuff like that. 5 years ago, put that into your tank, people just laugh at you.
Right.
Yeah,
I like it.
I know
that's
that's I've gotten multiple comments. I don't know if you can see the Facebook comments too, but And on the Twitch, whatever the heck it is. But the bottom line is, lots of people are mentioning that they really love that scape, and I know I do too. So it's going to be very, very cool. I like the minimalistic look, definitely. Very good.
Hopefully it'll be the one.
Yep. Hey, Reef.
Better be this time.
Aw.
Yeah.
Reef dudes, can you show an update of your tank, or are you not able?
I'd have to rejoin on my phone.
But it's okay, never mind. We'll check out Reef Dude's channel too to see the update on his tank. I don't know, guys.
Right, well, it's 10 to 3.
I was gonna
and
say
I'm gonna have to go. Bedtime for me.
I want to thank you so much again for Michael for staying so late and just to talk to my listeners. Definitely, if there's any other questions, I will make sure that you are notified of them. And everybody go check out Aaron's Aquarium. I'll put the links in the description. And thanks again, Michael, for coming.
And don't forget as well, on the last Friday of every month, the Aaron's Aquarium Friday night live stream. If you want to just kick back, relax, have a laugh, it's the place to be.
Now, actually, really quick, do you go to YouTube for that? Is that
YouTube? Yeah, only
okay.
YouTube. And 99% of all of my live streams are on YouTube. I've just started now and then doing live streaming on Instagram, but it's very sparse.
Gotcha.
But yeah, all my live streams are done on YouTube.
Well, Reef Dudes, thanks for jumping in. Michael, again, thank you so much for coming. We can't wait to see the one develop and turn into the one. Well, it already is, but you know what I mean. And I'm gonna check out your Friday live stream. So again, just thanks for staying up to chat with us, and we'll definitely see you soon. Okay.
No problem.
Happy Wine Wednesday, everybody watching. See you next Wednesday. Cheers.
Thank you.